Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Thank you for joining this GP Strategies webinar, where we'll explore best practices and innovative insights to help you and your organization improve performance.
Good afternoon and evening to everyone. It's 4:31 India time, and let's start. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that we'll be sending a copy of our recording a couple of days out after this webinar. And if you have any questions during this session, I encourage you to send your questions to chat, where Bonnie can respond. Just note to set your chat setting to everyone so that everyone sees it and are aware of the questions and can participate along as well. We also have a Q&A at the very end of the webinar, so feel free to ask your questions away. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our presenter for today, Bonnie Beresford. She's an industry-recognized human capital strategist, performance consultant, speaker, and author. She leads the learning and performance analytics practice at GP Strategies. Her expertise at connecting learning to business impact has helped clients earn recognition from the Association for Talent Development, Chief Learning Officer magazine, and training industry. Bonnie, a data geek at heart, holds a PhD in human capital management, a master's in business administration, and a bachelor's in marketing. With that, I will hand it over to you, Bonnie. I think you can start the session.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Zach, and welcome everybody, and good afternoon, good evening. And here I am talking to you from Detroit, Michigan in the US, and it's 7 a.m. So good morning from my side of the ocean. Today we are going to be talking about measurement. And as Zach and I were chatting before the session got started, the interest in measurement just continues to grow in the learning and development space, because more and more we're wanting to show the effectiveness of what we're doing. And we're hearing all the buzz about AI and big data. And from a learning side, we've often kind of ignored that or kind of been off on the side. And it's feeling like, boy, we need to get into that and start using data ourselves, like other areas in the business are using data. So that's what we're going to talk about. How are learning organizations able to pull in business data to show business impact? So let's get us started. I want to have a little chat with you, because for most of you, it's later in the day. So by now you have probably measured something. If in the chat you could put down something you have measured, and not necessarily a business thing, because measurements are all around us. Oh, competencies. That's a tough one to measure. Weight. Yeah, time to complete work. Calories burned today during my morning walk. Excellent. Hours. Oh my gosh, hours spent in meetings. And now if you've got Microsoft Outlook, they're happy to tell you how many hours of interrupted time you have. Isn't that true? And steps, the steps I took. And now we're getting devices that track our steps for us, and they beep at us if we don't take enough. Yeah, so measurement really is everywhere. From food calories, yeah, to iPad usage by teachers. How about iPad usage by students? How about TV time watched by children? All kinds of things that we measure. And so, we tend to back away from measurement in the learning space, but it really is human nature to measure, whether you're working out, or whether you're trying to lose weight, or whether you're making a recipe. You might be measuring. And I like that one, data consumption on mobile. Yes. Things that affect us. So when it's important to us, we figure out a way to measure. So we're going to look at measurement in two ways. We measure to prove. If we get on the scale in the morning, or we're looking at our Fitbit or our Apple Watch to see how many steps, we're proving to ourselves, yes, I did it. But we're also using measurement to improve. In other words, if I did not lose the weight, let's say I had been dieting all week and not having any sweets, and so I get on the scale and I think I should be better, and I'm not. Well, something else happened that made me not be able to lose the weight that I wanted to lose. So just like an athlete in business, we use measurement to prove our ROI, but also to improve so we can continuously get better. And think about all the measures that you mentioned in the chat. And each of those you would use to prove, and you would also use to improve because it informs you. When measurement can inform us to change behavior, we're using it to improve. The current state of measurement is interesting, and because it hasn't changed in that long. We have, many of us in the learning area have grown up with the Kirkpatrick and the Phillips model, where we've got our level 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe level 5. Did you know that this model was originally published in 1959? So it is over 60 years old. We would expect after 60 years of trying something, we would be good, right? If you've been at something for 5 years and you're not good, don't you try to do better? But this one we've been at for 60 years. So how are we doing? There's a research study from Burson that says, that asks learning leaders, what is it that you do measure? And you can see here that we're measuring those things of enrollments, completions, satisfaction. But when it gets to those more application and impact metrics, not so much. The same survey asked what's important. Because when we see what's happening, we're spending a lot of time measuring the efficiency side of things and not very much time measuring the effectiveness and impact. What you may also note here is the efficiency metrics tend to be those that we own in L&D. They are in the LMS. We can easily get that data. It's right there. Our LMS might even have standard reports. We don't even have to think about what the report looks like. We just push a button and get our data. The others, getting to the effectiveness and impact, that requires data outside of L&D. And that's where it gets a little more difficult because we don't own that data. But if we want to measure the impact and effectiveness, we have to be able to get to that data. So if we've got this situation where over 90% of learning leaders want to measure, and only 16% actually are, we have to ask the question, why? Sometimes we hear when there's a will, there's a way. Well, it appears that there's a will. We want to, but only 16% are. So I have a question for you, and Zach is going to put up a polling question for us about why. If so many people want to measure impact, but so few are, why? So Zach, is that a poll question? There we go. There's our poll question. So if y'all would take a moment and respond, we can see why some folks aren't measuring. Yeah, we've got another write-in comment also that it's time consuming and costly. That wasn't on our list here, but yes.
I'll give it a couple more seconds before I close the poll. We're currently at about 32 out of 47 people having answered. About 15 people left. 3, 2, 1. I'll close the poll here.
Okay. And Zach, can everybody see the poll? Can you show the poll?
Yep, sharing results.
Okay. Well, your results are somewhat similar. This same poll that took the how many are measuring, how many want to, also asked the why. And their number one reason was competing priorities. They just had other things to do. I can't get around to measuring. But you can see that number 2 was actually your number 2 as well, which is I don't know what to measure. I don't know how to measure. And then I can't get the data and no one is asking. So let's see what we can do about this, because the competing priorities, I sometimes think that's an interesting one, because I know that if I have something that I have to do that I don't know how to do or I don't like to do, I procrastinate. And so I could say I have competing priorities. I do not like cleaning the bathroom. So, oh, I have to bake cookies. I have to go for a run. I can find all kinds of things to do instead because I don't want to do it or I don't know how to do it. And so I wonder if sometimes our competing priorities are because I don't know what or how. The focus of what we're going to be talking about today is exactly that. The what to measure and how to measure. Because that kind of is upskilling. The competing priorities may be a real reality in your organization, but knowing what and how is sometimes what keeps us from moving forward. And that's where we're going to focus today. I tend to think that maybe some of it's a part of an alignment challenge, because if I'm trying to measure business impact, I have to align with the business to make sure that my training is doing what the business wants it to do so that I can measure the success of it, right? But how do I do that? And if I don't strategize and map it out, I'm just going to hope a miracle occurs. I do sales training and hope that sales go up. Sales might go up, but I'm not going to be able to defend that it was my training versus advertising or a new product launch or a new incentive program for consumers. And we want to be able to isolate the effect. So we need to get aligned. And you might have noticed that our old model here, we do have the L&D focused measures here in the gray, and then we get into the darker blue. We've got the business focused measures. We want to add to this model. We want to add to the upfront part of it, right before we start, this alignment phase, which connects our learning to the business goals, is going to help us articulate what good looks like in measurable terms so that everything we build can be aligned with the business. You saw a level 6 pop up here too. And we had talked about measurement to improve. And this level 6 takes us beyond that ROI. ROI tends to be looking in the rearview mirror saying, how did we do? This is what we spent. This is what our benefit was. And that's fine. But the improve part is, how could I deploy it better next time? Where did it go wrong? What's not working? So I can spend that money on more effective areas of L&D. So we're going to take a look at what this really looks like, this alignment. And what we're going to do is now connect those dots. We're not going to have a cloud and a miracle in the middle. We're going to connect the dots. And we're going to do it with what we call leading indicators and business results. You might have heard the term leading indicators and lagging indicators, because the lagging comes later in time. I like to use the term business results because, well, does lagging sound negative? Like I came in last place, I'm lagging behind. But business results tells us, business data, I need to get into the business. I cannot show impact with data that's sitting in my LMS. I have to get outside. And so this is going to push us to remember we have to get into the business data. And what we're looking for here is evidence that it's working. What are those observable things that we can measure? Because that's what we're all about, is wanting to measure. I'm going to introduce you to a tool called the measurement map. And this is something that we've had extreme success with, helping organizations map that alignment from their learning objectives, from their learning program, all the way to the business goals. It's a relatively simple concept, and you'll see how it works in a moment. We've got these leading indicators and business results. So what do I mean? If you were to own a store and you had people walking through your store and some had an empty cart and some had a full cart, that would be an indicator of something. If all the people in your store had empty carts, how much profit do you think you're going to make that day? How much profit might you make from the people with the fuller cart? Probably more, right? So that would be a leading indicator. You could see it's not the final result. My final business result is the tally for the day, the money that came in, and then the profits and so on. So we're thinking of things that came first, kind of cause, then effect, if you will. If I stock my store properly with things that consumers want, then when consumers come shopping, we hope that they fill their buggy, and that when they cash out, there is a good revenue stream for us. And so we can't count the dollars yet when they're still in the buggy. They could still put those things back. But once they check out, now we've got it. So we've got this kind of cause and effect. I've got a simple example to show you how the measurement map works. You know, and all of these are called key performance indicators. I'm sure you've heard that term. All of these are KPIs. So let's take this to a restaurant, and imagine that you own a restaurant and you have just hired Bonnie to help you build a training program for your front of house staff, your wait staff, because you want to ensure you think that wait staff can help you be more profitable. Now, there are a lot of things that might help you be more profitable. But let's take a look at what the front of house staff could do. I would ask you, well, if you want your front of house staff to help, where do you think they could help? And you would perhaps say, I would like the average bill per table to be higher. If people purchased more food, ordered more food, my revenue would go up. And if we could increase the number of tables we turn per day, because I know that the value per table is so much, and if we can turn more tables. And I think my front of house staff, my wait staff, can certainly help with that. And I would say, well, how could they help with that? And perhaps the number of drinks they ordered. We have people, lots of people want water, but we have some specialty drinks with some very special fruit drinks and so on. If they ordered those, there's a higher margin on those. And if they were to order more high value meals, we have a great selection. And if they were trained to be able to sell the delicacies of the higher priced meals, that would be helpful. And if they could turn the tables faster, if they could serve faster, if they could clear faster, if they could make sure that the guests are all taken care of, but get that table turn up, that would be great. So now I, as the training developer, have a better idea of what to train people on. There are a lot of things I could train my front of house staff on, like how to take an order or how to serve, but that's not going to get us to the profitability. The things that are going to get us to the profitability will be having them being able to upsell customers on the high value meals or on the drinks, and then being able to service quickly and efficiently so we can get those table turns. So if I'm seeing, as I walk through my restaurant, I'm seeing people with the fancy drinks on the table and a lot of the higher end meals on the table, then I'm going to know, oh, that training's working. And I am certainly going to expect that the average bill today is going to be better. And that's going to help my profitability. So a simple example of the cause and effect. What we're really doing here is creating a causal chain of evidence. We're trying to build the story that my training contributed to the profitability of the restaurant. And by making this causal chain, we're showing the breadcrumbs of how I would get to that point and make that argument, make that causal argument. And so when we turn it into a measurement map, it looks something simply like this. I'm going to go back to that Olympic example that we used at the beginning about measure to prove and measure to improve, because this same concept of cause and effect in a measurement map holds in training. It could also hold in something like Olympic sports. So let's presume we had a swimmer who was going to compete in 4 races. And his goal is to win Olympic gold. But to do that, what does he have to do? He knows he must beat 1:45 in the freestyle. Well, what does he have to do to be able to do that? He has to know how many breaths he's going to take in lap 1 and lap 2, because every time he takes a breath, he changes his aerodynamics and slows down just a little bit, but he needs to stay oxygenated, so he has to breathe. So what's the optimum number? And the same with the number of strokes, because if he's swimming and he hits the wall mid-arm, that's a wasted stroke. So Olympic athletes and any athlete will know how many strokes they need and how many breaths they take to stay oxygenated, but to have their best time. And so they're trying to always improve that. In practice, they're working to improve that. But what does he have to do that? He has to know what his working heart rate is, so that can help oxygenate his blood, and what his body fat is and his weight, and reaction time. So when they shoot the gun, you don't want a false start. So he's got to get that just right. And what does he have to do that? He has to know what his caloric intake is and his resting heart rate and so on. So now he and his trainer can come up with a good training regimen. So if the day before a race, he goes out and eats lots and lots of wonderful, wonderful, but very, very spicy Indian food, and wakes up with heartburn, cannot get to sleep, eats a big bowl of ice cream, what's happening to his weight, his metabolism, his heart rate, and his hours of sleep? Will he have a good race? Probably not. So when we talk about athletes having a ritual, it's because they know if they don't do that training regimen right and do everything right before race day, they're not going to have their good race. There was a question here about the map being pretty obvious in these senses, but not so obvious in professional development and leadership. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples to show you how others have implemented a map to get at some of this stuff. Because really, at the end of the day, we are challenged. We might say, I did sales training and sales went up, but people are always going to say, yes, but it was something else. So how do we overcome that? How do we show that it was ours? How do we isolate the effect of our program? And sorry, there is no magical statistical formula. It's not like you haven't found the right statistician or gone to the right stats class. There is not a single formula that says show causation. The way we show causation is threefold. One, the cause must precede the effect. Your training must happen before the effect. If sales go up and then I train, it obviously wasn't the training. If I train and sales go up, maybe I've met the first requirement of showing a causal argument. The second is a correlation. They must travel together. So as I train more people, sales should go up. As I train more people on safety, injuries should go down. So they should travel together. If I train more people on safety and injuries go up, oh my gosh, that was a bad safety program. It sure was not cause and effect. So we have to have that correlation. And we have to rule out the other plausible explanations. The incentive program, the advertising. Bonnie was just a good performer to start with. Those sorts of things. And that one, my friends, is the hardest to do. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up and stuck. So what you have to do to rule out those other alternative explanations is really two things. The first is a logic model, which tells us what to measure and gives us that causal chain of evidence. That was our measurement map. And the second is a good research design, which is how in the world are we going to measure? And that's a measurement plan. So we have to have that causal chain to be able to make the causal argument, because when we build that measurement map with our business partners, and that's how I always do it. I always build it with the business partners. Why? First, they know the metrics that are important to them. They know why they're sending their people to training. I want my people to improve at XYZ. The second reason I like a business partner there is then they believe the causal chain that we just built. If we're building this causal chain and the business partner believes it, if he sees, going back to the restaurant example, if he sees more drinks being served, he's going to say, oh yeah, in the training, we told people to upsell on drinks and my profits are going up. Drinks are going up, profits are going up. Gosh, that training must be working. He was part of building that causal chain. Therefore, he is going to be believing it and defending it along with you. And the third reason to have your business partner there is they have the data. We talked earlier about being able to get the data. And if your business partner is part of building your measurement map, part of your logic model, part of your causal chain, and they're telling you what the metrics are that are important, guess who owns the data? It's their data. They've got their monthly scorecard they're looking at, and they want to see those numbers move. And if you're trying to connect your training to those numbers on their scorecard, they are more likely to get you that data so you can do your analysis than if you just came knocking a month later and said, hey, Mr. Restaurateur, can you give me some data? I want to measure this. You're like, why? No, when you bring them in as part of it, then they're part of the solutioning and they're part of helping you get the data. So we talked about the measurement map. Now the measurement plan is where we get into how are we going to measure this? Are we going to have, who's our study population? Can we have test and control groups? Do we have people that got some training and some that didn't get training so we can compare? Or do we just have to look at things progressing over time because it's all new and everybody got the training at the same time? This is where you really have to think about who's getting trained. Did everybody get trained? What's the timing of the training? Can I split my people into test and control groups? What are those other factors? Do I believe that region might be a factor in terms of how well Bonnie performs over Amy? Might tenure be a reason that Daniel is doing better than Francis? If we have those thoughts, we need to factor those into our analysis. Otherwise, we're going to present our analysis and somebody is going to say, yes, but people who have been here longer should perform better. And if you didn't look at it by tenure, you're going to be caught flat-footed and have to go back and do your analysis on that as well. So we want to think about things and put those in our plan so we can factor those in as we're looking at the data. Again, the time parameters are not only when did the training take place, but how long will it take for this to show up? If you're doing call center training, you might expect that the customer service representatives are able to apply that training within the week, and you should see something within a week or 2 or 3. If it's leadership development, that might take a little bit longer to show up. Those behaviors take longer to take hold and longer to show an impact. So you need to think about when you can measure and when does your stakeholder expect results, and set realistic expectations there. One of the beauties of having leading indicators is that you can measure those first and measure your business results a couple months later if you need to show some results. You might be able to see some of those leading indicators right away, but not the business results yet. So you could measure all at once. You could measure your leading indicators first. It really is going to depend on your program. And that's why this plan is so important. It's like setting up a science experiment, really. What is it that you want to test? What are your hypotheses? And where are you going to get the data and what's the data going to look like? And that comes in your data requirements. So there's a lot that goes into thinking about measurement. It's not just pushing a button and getting a spreadsheet. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to compare? Because showing causation is all about comparing what happened before to what happened after to show that there's been a positive change. To illustrate how this comes to fruition, I've got 3 different examples that I'm going to walk you through so you can see how different organizations have attacked or tackled the challenge of measurement. And this first one does happen to be an automotive sales training. Like I said, I'm from Detroit, and we have a lot of automotive companies here, and sales training is serious business for them, as we have many manufacturers all competing against each other for sales with the customer. And this particular manufacturer had over 100 trainers going into the dealerships. And the way our dealerships work here, we have dealerships across the country, and they carry that manufacturer's brand. And so the trainer would go into the dealership and train hands-on with the sales staff on the vehicle. And that is an expensive way to train, live training and sending trainers to each different workplace. So the idea of this program they were putting in place, they were calling it Fast Forward. They wanted to improve the efficiency of the trainers and the effectiveness of those trainers. They also wanted to help dealers with onboarding, because car dealerships, at least in the US, are not very good at onboarding new salespeople. They think it's a high turnover position, and well, we hired Bonnie. If she can sell, she'll stay, and that'll be fine. If she can't, we'll go and hire Grace next, or we'll hire Joel. So we want to be sure that the trainers can maybe help with this, because the dealers aren't doing a very good job. And at the end of the day, we want to sell more cars and trucks. So what they were doing was upskilling the product trainers. They called it Fast Forward, and the idea was to get these trainers more facilitative. Prior to this program, they had the trainers were more car specifications and facts, and they could tell you the torque and the towing power and the cubic meters of storage, and the mileage of the vehicles, and all those facts and figures. But you all know that everybody can look that up, including the consumer. So that's not what somebody wants the sales consultant to necessarily know. You want the sales consultant to know, how does this fit into my lifestyle? Hey, if I've got this kind of trailer I want to tow, or if I have to take 8 kids to soccer practice, how many kids can I fit in here, and what will it look like? And how do I get the seats down to put all my gear in the back, or whatever? So we want the trainers to become more facilitative and have more activities and role plays, overcoming customer situations. And they actually had something called Listen More Than Talk, because they actually called it Wait, Why Am I Talking? Because you get somebody who's used to being the expert on the product, and all they want to do is talk about the product. We wanted them to stop talking, get the sales consultants engaged, asking questions, doing role plays, and working through customer scenarios. So that's what they wanted the trainers to do: target new hires by getting to them sooner, and increase the time that they spent in front of sales consultants. These trainers are doing a lot of driving. The US is a big place, and dealers could, or the trainers could spend a lot of time driving from dealer A to dealer B, just due to inefficient scheduling. So that's what they wanted to do. And they want to know, well, is it going to work? Guess what we did? We built a measurement map, because we ultimately wanted to know, did this training add value? Did it enhance the value of the trainers? Did it sell more vehicles? Do we reach more people? Is there anything we can learn to improve it? So ultimately, the goal of the manufacturer was to increase sales and market share. Pretty obvious in a sales situation. But what were they going to do by upskilling the product trainers to get there? The first thing we did was look at the product trainer behavior. What do we want the product trainers to do differently? So this was training for the trainers, who were then going to train the salespeople. And you can see some of the metrics here. What percentage of their assigned dealers, because each dealer has a territory, what percentage did they get to each quarter? Did they make it? Did they make their schedule? Were the trainers getting coaching sessions? Because we had coaches that were supposed to be helping them, and if the coaches had a bad schedule, they couldn't get out and coach the trainers. And they were also responsible for mentoring new hires at the dealership. So how many did they do? How much time of theirs was spent on direct training versus travel? We knew they had to have some on travel, but we wanted to reduce that. And then the coach would observe the trainer, and was there improvement over their prior observation? Talking the appropriate amount of time. Did these trainers talk over the salespeople? Did they engage them? And were they using customer scenarios in their training? You can see, so this is still data within the learning department. The level 1 survey from salespeople, will this training make me more successful? Then there was this increased use of a mobile app. This manufacturer has a digital app that sales consultants can use to look up those specifications of a vehicle. And the trainers are supposed to teach them how to use that app. Do we see an uptick in usage? And of course, it's digital, so that data was collected. And then we're looking at how many students are they reaching and how many unique students. And then what are the mystery shop scores and the customer satisfaction scores of the students that they're reaching? And if the trainers are improving, and if they're using customer scenarios, and if the students are saying, hey, I think this training will help me be more successful, and we're seeing evidence of it with the mobile app, we're seeing evidence of it because more people are showing up to the training when the trainer comes, and the customer satisfaction scores are going up, then we would expect to see sales going up and new hire turnover going down. So there's a question here about, in the sales example, about 14 leading indicators. Is it a good idea to arrive at a composite score or analyze these 14 indicators separately? Let me show you what this organization did, and maybe that'll answer the question. Because the first thing they were trying to do is change the behaviors of their trainers. And they put together a scorecard, a dashboard for the trainers, so they could see on each individual KPI, how are the trainers doing? Are they promoting the digital sales assistant app? How many new hires did they reach? How many, this was the new hire training jumpstart. What about the level 1 score and the students per session? So if anybody was falling behind on any one of these, they were going to use this to coach the trainer to improve. Because if we came up with one big aggregate score for all of this, you wouldn't, and it might average, you get the average of averages, and it might get a little muddy, and you wouldn't see where things were not working. Because some trainers were having like 3 students per session. Can you imagine sending a live trainer to a place for 3 students? And how expensive that would be? So that would indicate that we needed to coach that trainer on how to get more students or how to be more efficient in his time management and so on. So we look at this at this point at an individual trainer, but then we would roll it up on each metric to see overall, metric by metric, how we were doing. So once we measured these leading indicators first, are the trainers adopting? Is their behavior changing enough so that we can measure whether Fast Forward, our upskill program, made a difference? So once we got the trainers changing their behavior and we had good evidence that their behavior was changing, we were then ready to measure the effectiveness of it. Importantly, there had been product training before. These trainers were out there before. We wanted to know if this new training was better. So we had to see how effective they were prior. So before Fast Forward, we would see that if you came into a dealership, your sales level was about here. But the longer you're at, this is 5 months before. So if I started 5 months ago, at least in the US, the culture is that if I'm a new salesperson, I sell to my family and friends. That's just typically what happens. And by my 3rd month or so, I'm starting to run out of family and friends who need cars. So now I have to really actually start selling. And this is where we start seeing a lot of turnover, because salespeople realize they can't sell. They don't know how to prospect. And the good news was, though, once they got the training, once they got a product trainer visit, they started to see their sales go up. You know, not a whole unit, but 0.7, which adds up over time. And for a new sales consultant, an extra car a month can mean a lot. Let me answer one of the questions in the chat about the leading indicators. Are they supposed to be about the group being trained instead of the trainers? This case study is a little interesting because we had trained the trainers. And so we're really measuring the effectiveness of the trainers. So we wanted to measure the trainer behavior change, and then was their behavior change and the new program that we taught them to deliver sufficient to improve sales? But typically this one might be a little confusing, I'm sorry, because there are kind of two groups here. We've got the trainers and the salespeople, but what we're trying to do is measure the effectiveness of the trainers. Now, what happened after fast forward? Those people increased 1.3 vehicles per month. So after fast forward, before fast forward, it was good news. It was good news that the product trainers before were still helping improve sales. The good news was that with fast forward, the new training methodologies that we taught in the T3, yes, the train the trainer, exactly. So that training methodology was helping improve sales even more. And this amounted to 2.4 vehicles per month by the time they were at 4 months after their training, which for a sales consultant, an additional 2 vehicles a month is a lot. In the US, generally an average salesperson sells about 8 cars a month. So 2 more really helps a new sales consultant get a big boost. And so we wanted to know, so this was great news. This was absolutely fantastic news because A, the product trainers were good before, and B, now they're better. Remember, we also wanted to help with that new hire turnover. And what we saw was that training is driving sales volume, and sales volume is the driver of retention for salespeople. Training did not directly drive retention in this example. We saw as sales volume increased. So if as a sales consultant went from 5 units per month up to 8 units per month, the retention the likelihood of retaining went up 12 percentage points. So if we can get new hires to sell more sooner, the likelihood of them staying is greater. And this was intuitive, but we didn't have the data to prove it. And so now we had the data to prove it. We could actually put numbers to it. So we knew that the improved training, the trainers were delivering better training. That better training was improving sales performance. That sales performance was improving retention. So what became very important then was reaching more people sooner. Before fast forward, before we instructed the trainers before we realigned the territories and had them more focused on getting into the right dealerships, they reached about 58% of new sales consultants in the first month. After fast forward, it became 80%. So as you can imagine, when we realized that boost in retention, boy, if we can get these people selling more sooner, they'll stay longer. And so it's kind of a cycle here that we need to get in there faster. And so fast forward was helping with that as well. So what we learned from this measurement were things all about measuring to prove and to improve. And the first one was we proved that fast forward created even a greater improvement in sales, and that it's helping to reach new hires sooner. We're reaching 80% of them in the first 3 months. How can we continue to improve? And this organization said we really need to put a push on the new hires. And we need to provide easy access for the trainers to see which dealers have new hires. So what we did after this program, on the dashboard for the trainers, they have a report now that shows them each dealership and how many people they have that are 1, 2, and 3 months in the dealership. So they can look at their list of dealers when they're making their schedule and see which dealerships have the most new hires and potentially target those dealers for for training sooner. Our next example, it's still in automotive, but it's a very different one. This is in warranty administration. This is on the service side of the business. And with warranty at a dealership, just a little background, if your car is under warranty, that means you as the customer don't have to pay for the repair. The manufacturer pays. You take it to the dealer fixes it, and the manufacturer pays the dealer. So there are a lot of rules to be sure that it's a legitimate claim. Is the vehicle under mileage? Is this part under warranty? And so on. Within any vehicle, you may have multiple warranties. You might have a warranty on your battery. You might have a warranty on your tires. You might have a warranty on the audio system. You might have one on the drivetrain. So even on an individual car, there might be multiple warranties. Then you take multiple cars, then you take multiple model years, and you can see that the number of policies and very small changes that might happen between each can become very, very large and overwhelming very quickly. That leads to errors in filing warranty claims. And if there's an error in a warranty claim because you had the wrong code, or that part was no longer under warranty, or whatever else, the claim gets rejected. When the claim gets rejected, the dealer has to then examine the claim, figure out what's wrong, resubmit it. And there's somebody back at the manufacturer that's now having to double check it and say, did they fix it correctly? All this time, the money's being held up from getting paid to the dealer. So you already took your car in, you're happy, you got it fixed for free. The dealer's waiting to get paid. And now, because of these paperwork errors, they're having a delay. So the manufacturer said, we're going to put in an online warranty resource center to consolidate everything and make things easier to view online and to get your answers. So you can, if you've come across something you're unfamiliar with, you can quickly look it up. That one-stop shop for all the warranty stuff. And they had a 2-day live warranty workshop where they went through a lot of this material. And actually, this was triggered because of COVID. And they converted it into 4 virtual classrooms, 4 webinars instead. So what they wanted to do was to reach more of their targeted audience and to reduce those reject rates. And when I talk about the targeted audience, let me show you what happens. Well, we'll get into the map first. So they wanted to improve the cash flow for the dealers, of course. The dealers wanted that, and the OEM, the manufacturer, wanted to reduce their administrative cost savings. And they all agreed that if we can reduce the reject rate, that is a win-win-win all the way around. There weren't a whole lot of leading indicators outside of the training area we could get our hands on, but we could look at how many people are logging in to that warranty resource center. What are they looking at? How many downloads are? So are people using it? And are they satisfied with it? Because if they're using it, we're going to assume that they're finding what they need, especially if they go back again and again. And then on the training, we've got trainings out there, web-based, and these new workshops. And are they coming? And what percentage of the dealership, what's the overall training rate? So rather than looking at an individual doing training, we're looking at the overall dealership rate. We did that because reject rate is a dealership metric. And so we had to get to the dealership training rate to be able to compare. And you'll see how that comes out. So when I talked about the audience, when they had the live workshop, it was off-site. It was in a nice resort location. And when training is in a resort location, companies might want to send managers. So what was happening is this training, and people said it was good training, but the managers, the service managers, were going to the training. And guess who fills out all the paperwork every day? The warranty administrator. But because you had to pay for travel and lodging and all of that sort of thing, they weren't going to send their warranty administrator to the training. So they changed up who got the training. by making it virtual, because now the dealership did not have to pay to send their warranty clerk to an offsite training. Now they could do it in dealership, and they were able to reach now the people who were actually actually doing the warranty repairs. And what happened was, we saw for those dealers that took an average amount of the training, they saw a reduction of 0.5 points in their reject rate. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but the reject rate tends to be averaging somewhere between probably 12 and 17%. So 0.5, when you're only dealing with a 5-point spread, 0.5 is a big deal. We did look at some things, though, by tenure of staff. Remember, we said, well, it could be that they have a lot of new staff, that's why the training worked. And guess what? The training was more effective for dealerships that had newer staff. Those that had very few new staff, the training helped a little bit. But those with newer staff that weren't familiar with all the warranty paperwork, and they didn't have that experience to base their decisions on, got a lot more value out of the training in terms of reject rates. So what we learned here was that the training and the performance support did improve by reducing reject rates, and it was more pronounced for those newer staff members. Because it did help everybody, you saw that not everybody engaged. Only about 25% of the warranty administrators participated. So they recognized they need to promote. This was elective training, so they wanted to promote it more and more, so more people would take it, because it was driving definite benefit for the dealer by reducing those reject rates, and especially focus on getting newer warranty administrators into the training. We've got one other example that's going to take us into that leadership development realm, and this is for first level leaders in a manufacturing setting. And so they wanted to instill a shared vision and operating practices across the company and develop future leaders and really be more profitable. This was in a manufacturing setting, and they established that, well, one of the things we're training these folks to come out of here and do is to have better conversations with their people, and to establish development plans with them. And we also are going to evaluate our performance ratings are on the what and the how. What are they doing, but also how well are they doing it? So they said, we want to look at those two things. If our supervisors are doing well there, that would be good. And we would expect team engagement to go up if they're getting development plans. And if they're doing well, we would expect our pipeline of future leaders to grow. And if people are engaged, we'd expect lower absenteeism, and we'd expect more supervisors to be able to get promoted. And if they're promoted, they're going to be happy. They're not going to turn over. And if people are engaged and they're coming to work, we don't have high absenteeism, safety should go up, because we don't have people working double shifts. We don't have people doing jobs they're not used to. And then they can drive productivity of the plant. So then we went about measuring this one. And this was, I show this map here because this is an observational study. This is a typical one we like to do, which is cause and effect of test and control groups. So we've got the people who got trained, the people who didn't get trained. We have their before performance, their after performance, and then we're going to look at all these factors. What division were they in? How big was the plant? What was their tenure? And so on. So this is all part of our measurement plan. This goes into the design of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. One of the key measures was turnover. And our baseline showed that turnover of leaders in this company, of the first level leaders, was over 12% before this training. Afterwards, it went to 9%. So we could say, yes, the training worked. But we wanted to split it by our test and control groups. And look what happened. The control group, the group that did not get any training, still reduced their turnover. But the drop was even greater for those with the training. So now we're starting to say it wasn't the economy, because both sets of leaders were in the same economy. They were working for the same company. They had the same economic dynamics, the same change of policies, the same changes of leadership, all those sorts of things that you might think would drive other things. What was different between these two groups? The training. They determined that this savings was worth $2.3 million in the first year, because they had 64 plants and several thousand leaders. Just as we did with the warranty example, though, we segregated it, or we segmented the data by tenure. And look at the dramatic difference in reduction in turnover for supervisors new to job. So supervisors who were newer to the role, they maybe yesterday were on the line with their colleagues, and today now they're the supervisor. That's a difficult thing to do. And so this research showed that the training really, really helped those people new in role be more comfortable with being leaders. It did help everybody, but it was a more pronounced effect for the newer people. So this suggested that we should really maybe target those people new in role to get some leadership skills rather than just throwing them in that job. Maybe we should train them first. Kind of a good idea. We looked at safety and saw that the training had no effect on plants at large plants. So we segmented the data by size of plant. Okay. And so we saw an effect at smaller plants where the higher trained saw a greater leap in their scores than the others. And then we had one final metric I'm going to share with you, and that was the productivity run rate. For this organization, this was number of cases that they produced. Think of it, widgets. How many cases of widgets came off the assembly line every day, every hour? And they had a monthly score. And we looked at this over time as leaders got trained, as the percentage of leaders in each plant got trained. As more leaders got trained, the run rate, the productivity rate went up. It was only 0.7, but they told us that 0.7 is actually tens of millions of dollars. So every little bit across many plants adds up fast. So to improve, we showed that the program reduced turnover. It improved run rates, and it generated a very positive ROI for them. They learned that they really needed to target the new supervisors. And if safety was an issue at large plants, it wasn't going to be the leadership training that made a difference. They have to have some other safety initiative to address that. So we've used measurement maps for all sorts of things, from onboarding and leadership development to measuring the adoption of new technologies like a learning experience platform or chatbots. This causal chain of evidence really can be used to outline any program. So key takeaways would be, organizations struggle getting beyond the basics. And getting aligned to the business goals is going to be essential if you want to show impact. You have to get to those business metrics. And a measurement map can be a great way to illustrate that and help uncover that. And it gives you that logic model. And you also need a plan. You can't just pull data. You've got to have a plan of how you're going to analyze the data to show that impact. And of course, my favorite is we measure to prove and improve. And we have just a couple minutes. I'd be very happy to take any questions that you have. We've tried to answer a couple in the chat as they came through, but be happy to answer any questions. Yeah, is the measurement map a registered tool that we could hire? Yeah, there are two ways on the measurement map. GP Strategies does have a consulting practice that can help you build measurement maps. We also have a measurement academy, which is a virtual program. It's blended learning, so it's activities online plus there are live workshops, and it's a 4-week program, and we offer that for organizations that want to upskill their own teams on how to build measurement maps and learn how to measure the impact of learning. So the GP website, if you go to the GP website and just look up measurement and analytics, you'll find the links for our services in that regard, and how to register for the academy. Our next academy is starting in November, I believe. Okay, tying strategic business goals, and we've got lots of good questions here. Let me answer the one about data privacy. Data privacy, if you might not be able to get me the data to do the analysis, but you might be able to get the data to do the analysis. Sometimes data is protected at an individual level from GDPR, the data privacy protection. So sometimes if you can get it aggregated or anonymized, there are ways to work around that. I have found where I can't get the data, I can coach the team internally to do the analysis. And And the leadership training, how do you tie to specific business goals and prove its value? That would probably be a one-on-one discussion I want to have with the organization. One challenge with leadership development is most organizations want it. Most organizations also have a hard time articulating about what good would look like. They want people to live the values. Okay, what does that look like? And they expect you as the training department to figure that out. That's where our measurement map is so valuable. What does good look like? We were doing a leadership development program for a hospitality company. We built a map and they realized their training was not going to answer the things they wanted to measure. So they ended up revising the training because the training was not aligned with what they really wanted the general managers at the hotels to do. And measure in nonprofit organizations. Yeah, I've done this work also in not-for-profit, and your outcomes become a little less financial perhaps, but I've done a lot of work in the workforce development space where you're looking to get people back to work. So there are ways. The causal chain of evidence works very well in the nonprofit space as well. It aligns nicely with theory of change. If you're a nonprofit, you might have heard of theory of change. It's similar to the measurement map. So we're at the top of the, we've exhausted our time here. And I know that Zach has been posting that there will be a link to this webinar, so you can go back and take another look and check out the Measurement Academy if you're interested in attending. And again, because it's virtual, it's open globally. And if the session is full, we'll schedule another one because we have had ongoing demand for this as more and more learning departments want to bring this skill set in-house. Zach, any closing comments for our group?
Nothing much, but yeah, thank you everyone for making time to attend this session with us. If you're interested to find out more, yes, you can reach out to us. I can put Srini's email address in the chat so you can contact him as well. Otherwise, you can fill out any contact form on the GP Strategies page and we'll reach out to you as well. Yeah, thank you everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie, and thanks, Jack, for taking this session forward. Thanks a lot, Bonnie. So hoping to see more sessions from your side.
Wonderful, and thank you all. I'm delighted we had such a wonderful crowd here today because that just lets me know that people really do care about measuring impact. Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks a ton. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
This webinar was brought to you by GP Strategies. Together, we help organizations transform through their people. You can access more webinars or download additional resources by visiting the GP Strategies Resource Library. The link is on your screen and in the description.